Hi there, and welcome to Lost in Literature. I'll be continuing with Julius Caesar, Act 1, Scene 2. Now, if you remember, last week we did Scene 1, and um, there was a lot of unrest in Rome. Caesar was on his way back to Rome, and he had um, defeated Pompey and also killed him. And all the commoners were out on the streets to celebrate Caesar's victorious return. And then you have these two tribunes who are supposed to represent the common people. They were going around, Flavius and Marullus, they were going around yelling and shouting at these people who had taken a day off, and they were out in the streets on the streets celebrating. So that is the situation, and we are already made aware of the uh, the fact that there are two factions: um, Pompey's supporters and people who wanted Caesar to be, uh, you know, um, ascend as um, the monarch. So it was basically a tussle between monarchy and the republic. All right, so this kind of a thing was going on. And now, here in scene 2, we have Rome, a public place, and there is a procession, you know, um, kind of proceeding. And you have the major characters here, that is Caesar, Antony, who's, of course, getting ready for his race across the city to celebrate Lupercal, which is a festival of harvest and fertility. All right, so he was getting ready for that, and there is Calpurnia, Portia, Decius, Cicero, Brutus, Cassius, and Casca. So Portia is the wife of Brutus. And you have the rest of the people here: Decius, Cicero, Brutus, Cassius, and Casca. All these people are against Caesar. So there was some kind of a plot being hatched. Okay? And in this scene, two things happen. Firstly, you have a soothsayer, someone who prophesies, or predicts the future. Now, this soothsayer, he warns Caesar, to be careful, to beware of the Ides of March. And then you have a talk between Cassius and Brutus following that, where Cassius is checking out Brutus's stand where Caesar is concerned. So this is exactly what we are going to deal with in part 1. All right, it's fairly long, so just gear up, all right, for a long listen. Hopefully the students will stay with me. And Srija and Flying Colors, it's for both of you, particularly my first ever students here. All right, okay. So Caesar, Calpurnia is calling Calpurnia. Casca, peace ho, Caesar speaks. Now, Casca is one of the conspirators, like I told you. And, he's pretending to be Caesar's follower, and he's shouting, please be quiet, Caesar wishes to speak. Caesar, Calpurnia, Calpurnia, hear my lord. Caesar, stand you directly in Antonius's way, when he doth run his course. Antonius, Caesar, my lord, So there you are. Caesar has already ordered Calpurnia to stand, in the way when Antony, or Antonius, as Caesar calls him very lovingly, uh, he starts running. Now, the interesting thing is, this is a kind of ritual. See, the Roman people were quite superstitious, and they followed a number of rituals like this. And this particular race was basically to celebrate harvest. But at the same time, it was also to, um, uh, you know, um, uh, deal with women who have no children. It was believed by the Romans that when these men ran, all right, these virile young men, when they ran, they would have to touch the women literally standing on their path with a leather lash or strap that they would hold and kind of wave them out of the way. And this would take away the curse the woman was under, the curse which did not allow her to produce children. Now, Caesar wanted an heir very, very badly. And so he reminds Antony, please do what's needful with Calpurnia. And then so again, after he has called Antony, he tells him once again, forget not in your speed, Antonius, to touch Calpurnia. For our elders say, the barren touched in this holy chase shake off their sterile curse, the curse of barrenness, sterility, that is eliminated, and the woman is able to bear children. So Antony says, I shall remember. When Caesar says, do this, it's performed. So you can see here, Antony is very much devoted to Caesar, and he always does whatever Caesar bids him. So that is the kind of relationship Antony shares with Caesar. He's very, very close to Caesar and in total admiration of him. He is a very loyal follower of Caesar and very genuine about it. So Caesar says, set on, start the race, and leave no ceremony out. Do not leave any ritual out in this race. And at this time, the soothsayer comes along. He says, Caesar. He's calling from the crowd. Caesar, ha, who calls? Casca, bid every noise be still, peace yet again. And again, Casca is pretending his head off. He says, come on, all of you be quiet, because Caesar's going to speak. And Caesar says, who is it in the press that calls on me? Who is it? I hear a tongue shriller than all the music, cries Caesar. Speak. Caesar is turned to hear. Apparently, Caesar was deaf in one ear. So it was a little difficult for him to grab the words. And he had to turn, his the ear that could pick up sounds. So now he tells the soothsayer, look, Caesar has turned to here, and look at him referring to himself in the third person. That again is an indication that right now Caesar was filled with himself and he considered himself quite powerful. I mean, he was riding on the high wave of success, and so he was referring to himself as Caesar, like very, very powerful people do. So the soothsayer says, beware the Ides of March. Caesar says, what man is that? Who is that? So then Brutus says he's a soothsayer and he bids you beware the Ides of March. Now, what is this Ides of March? It is the way Romans referred to days in a month. I I mean, Ides of March simply meant, the full moon day, that is the 15th of March. All right? So, on that particular day, the soothsayer told Caesar to be very careful. Caesar, set him before me. Let me see his face. So bring him here. I want to see him. Cassius, fellow, come from the throng. Now you have Cassius. He is the main conspirator. He is the one who hatches the plot to kill Caesar. So he says, come along, come from the crowd. Look upon Caesar. Caesar, what sayest thou to me now? Speak once again. The soothsayer, beware the Ides of March. Caesar couldn't be bothered about such predictions. Oh, he's a dreamer. Let's leave him. Pass. And he's just disregarding him, dismissing him. And then he's so full of his power that he feels nothing can harm him at this point. And where is the need for him to beware, the 15th of March? Absolutely no need. And then, along with the music, these people move on. And at that point, Cassius, like I told you, the main conspirator, the hatcher of plots, he corners Brutus. He wants to have a chat with Brutus to find out what he feels about the situation in Rome and what his attitude is towards Caesar. Okay? So Cassius says, will you go see the order of the course? He's asking Brutus, are you interested in watching this race? Brutus says, not I. Cassius, I pray you, do. So he says, well, if you want to watch, please go ahead. Brutus, I'm not gamesome. I'm not in a mood for any sports. I do lack some part of that quick spirit that is in Antony. He says, I'm not lively or, interested in sports the way Antony is. So, spare me, I'm not interested. Then he says, please let me not hinder you, Cassius. You go ahead if you want, I'll leave you. Cassius, he's watching Brutus very carefully. Now, this man is very shrewd. He wants to win Brutus over to his party. All right? He wants Brutus as a conspirator too. Why? Because Brutus is a much respected man in Rome. He was the cream of nobility, and the Romans really looked up on him with respect. All right? And they believed in him, they trusted him, okay, as a nobleman. So Cassius, who was actually jealous of Caesar, he wanted to kill Caesar for personal reasons, but he wanted to make it look like a noble act, as if he was doing it for Rome, to free Rome from dictatorship, monarchy, tyranny under Caesar, and to re-establish Rome as a republic. All right? So, how can he convince the people of it? It was only by getting Brutus on his side, because the Romans believed Brutus. Straight away, whatever Brutus said, the Roman public swallowed it. So, this was a very clever move on the part of Cassius. So now he wants to check out what Brutus feels. So he says, Brutus, I do observe you now of late. I have not from your eyes that gentleness and show of love as I was wont to have. So he says, now, Brutus, I've been watching you. I've been observing you. But lately, I do not get any affection from you. I don't seem to be receiving any affection from you. In fact, you bear too stubborn and too strange a hand over your friend that loves you. So he says, look, you are very, very hard upon me, right? You're very stubborn. You seem to have turned away from our mutual friendship. I find you cold now. And at the same time, you have become a stranger to me. And that was not how you were once upon a time. And believe me, you're doing this to somebody like me who loves you. I love you. All right? So Brutus says, please, Cassius, be not deceived. Don't be fooled by this look of mine. All right? And by this attitude of mine. If I have veiled my look, I turn the trouble of my countenance merely upon myself. So please don't be fooled by this, because if at all I have hidden my true feelings, it's only because I want to keep the trouble to myself. I have turned it upon myself. Right? Yes, I do have something that's worrying me, but I don't want to share it. I want to deal with it. Vexed I am of late with passions of some difference, conceptions only proper to myself. So he says, look, right now I'm very frustrated with all kinds of conflicting feelings. And I have these ideas which are playing on my mind. And we don't know what it is, but we can guess. What kind of conflict is Brutus tortured with? On one hand, Caesar is his friend. On the other hand, he can see the growing popularity of Caesar, and Caesar has lost some of his credibility with Brutus, who is totally for Rome as a republic in every way. So he says there are thoughts which are totally contrary, and I'm keeping it to myself. All right, they are personal and they concern only me, which maybe gives, some kind of, which has some kind of impact perhaps on my behavior. Maybe these feelings of mine have colored my behavior and I have moved away from people who are my friends. But let not therefore my good friends be grieved, but please don't take this too seriously to heart, among which number you are among my good friends. Cassius, you are one of my friend. Be you one? Among which number, Cassius, be you one? And don't misunderstand nor misunderstand any further my neglect, the fact that I have not been paying too much attention to you. Don't misunderstand, please. All right? Then that poor Brutus, with himself at war, forgets the show of love to other men. So says, please don't misunderstand, because I have been at war within myself, and in the bargain I've become so preoccupied with all these dominating, conflicting thoughts that I appear to have moved away from my friends. But that's not so. He assures Cassius that he is very much counted as a friend of Brutus. Now, Cassius says, then Brutus, I have much mistook your passion. I had really misunderstood you, your feelings, by means whereof This breast of mine hath buried thoughts of great value, worthy cogitations. All right? Now, because of this sudden change in your behavior, your reserved attitude, I have kept a lot of things to myself in my heart, and these thoughts are of great importance. So Cassius tells him, they are worthy cogitations. Cogitations, important thoughts. Tell me, good Brutus, can you see your face? Brutus, no, Cassius, for the eye sees not itself, but by reflection, but by some other things. So he says, of course I can't see my face. I can only see it when, it is reflected back to me, or maybe by some other things that echoes my personality back to me. Cassius, exactly. It is just. That's absolutely true. And it is very much lamented, Brutus, lamented, grieved. It's very much lamented that you have no such mirrors as will turn your hidden worthiness into your eye, that you might see your shadow. And he says, it is such a pity. It is something lamentable, distressing that there are no mirrors around you, and you cannot gauge your own worth. You're unable to understand your self worth and your place in Rome today and what is expected of you. You are not able to understand. All right? I have heard where many of the best respect in Rome, except of course immortal Caesar. He's immortal. He's going to live forever and rule over us forever. Speaking of Brutus, so I have heard many people, noble people, people regarded with high respect, speaking of you, Brutus, and they have spoken of you with much, much respect, and they look upon you because they are groaning underneath this age's yoke. So that's what is happening. They are groaning, all right, under the tyranny of this age, and they have all wished that the noble Brutus had his eyes. So Brutus says, into what dangers would you lead me, Cassius, that you would have me seek into myself for that which is not in me? Now Brutus is a little careful. He says, Array, what dangers are you going to lead me into? What risks will you make me take on a personal front by asking me to look for some qualities which I don't have? Cassius, therefore, good Brutus, be prepared to hear. And since you cannot see yourself so well as by reflection, see, listen to me. You cannot see yourself unless you are reflected. So let me be your glass and let me modestly, without any hype, without any exaggeration, discover to yourself. Let me show you your worth. Let me show that aspect of yourself which you don't seem to be aware of. And please don't be jealous on me, gentle Brutus. Were I a common laughter, if I'm the kind of man who jokes with everybody and I'm light-hearted, or if I'm the kind of man who will, mix with everyone, all right, with worn out, commonly used words. I mingle with everyone, and I profess my love and friendship towards them without any discrimination. If I'm that kind of man, or if you think I'm a flatterer, that I do fawn on men, if you think I am a flatterer, then for God's sake, change your mind about me. I'm not the kind of man who will flatter people or hug people and promise to be very friendly and loyal to them, and then behind their back spread rumors about them and ruin them. And I'm not the kind of person who will feast with anybody and then, um, say all kinds of things about them. I'm not that kind of a person. So please don't hold me dangerous. I am genuine where you are concerned. All right? And at that time, suddenly there is a flourish of trumpets and a lot of sound backstage. And Brutus says, "What means the shouting? I do fear the people choose Caesar for their king." Cassius, I. Do you fear it? So look at that. Now Brutus has spoken his mind. I do fear. I'm afraid that people are going to choose Caesar as their king. Cassius has picked up that word fear immediately, right? And then he says, "Oh, so you fear it. Then am I to think that you don't want it so? You don't want Caesar as a king?" Brutus, I would not, Cassius. No, I'm not exactly in favor of that idea. And yet I love him well. So this was the conflict in Brutus, because Caesar is his friend, and now he was riding high, and people were going to make him king. But Brutus was not sure if it was the right thing for Rome. And then he says, "But wherefore do you hold me here for so long? Why are you detaining me here? What is it that you would impart to me? What do you wish to tell me? If it be towards the general good of Rome, if it is for the good, for the benefit of Rome, you put honor on one side, and one eye, and death on the other. And I will look indifferently upon both. Indifferently in the same way. I would rather be honorable and die than be dishonorable and live." So he's very clear about it now that yes, I cannot be won over, by Caesar and whatever is going on now. For me, what matters is doing what's honorable, even if I have to die on account of it. For let the gods so speed me, let them bless me, as I love the name of honor more than I fear death. For me, honor matters, and death is something I will not fear if both these things are put side by side. Any day I would choose honor and rather die. So he has very clearly spelt out now to Cassius. And Cassius is still treading carefully. He says, "I know that virtue to be in you, Brutus, as well as I do know your outward favor." All right? So I'm very confident that you possess the quality of honor. Well, honor is the subject of my story. That is the crux of the matter, honor. I cannot tell what you and other men think of this life. I don't know what your opinion is of this life, or for that matter, what other men think of this life. But for my single self, I had as lief not be, as live to be in awe of such a thing as myself. So he says, I don't know what you people think, all right? But as for me, I'd rather not live, in a world where someone who's just a man like me is going to rule. All right? So this is what I feel. He is not yet named the man, but now he's boldly naming the man. I was born free as Caesar. So were you. You were born free. I was born free. and we both have fed as well. We have also eaten pretty well, and we can both tolerate the winter's cold as well as he. For once, now he's narrating an incident whereby he's going to tell Brutus about the weakness of Caesar. He's going to point that out to let him know that this man is not fit to rule Rome. So he says, for once, upon a raw and gusty day, cold, windy day, the troubled Tiber, now Tiber is the river as you know, chafing with her shores. She was raging against her shores on account of the high wind. Caesar said to me, now he was daring Cassius, Caesar, darest thou, Cassius? Now leap in with me into this angry flood. Come on, let's jump into the river and swim to yonder point. And let's make our way across these angry waters to that point. Upon the word, accoutred as I was, even though I was dressed, accoutred, I plunged in and asked him to follow and told him, come on, follow. So indeed he did. The torrent roared, the waves were roaring, the current was very strong, and we did buffet it. We were trying to beat it, we were trying to contend with it with strong muscles, throwing it aside and stemming it with hearts of controversy. We were competitive spirits. We were both competing against not only the tide, but also with each other. But before we could reach the point proposed, before we reached the point that we had decided to reach, Caesar cried, help me, Cassius, or I think I, as Aeneas, our great ancestor. So this guy shouted, help me, Cassius, or I sink. So there you are. He couldn't take it. He couldn't swim to the point that was suggested. And I, that is Cassius, as Aeneas, our great ancestor, did from the flames of Troy, upon his shoulders the old Anchises bear, so from the waves of Tiber did I, the tired Caesar. Now, he is talking about how, just like Aeneas saved his father Anchises from the burning Troy, he carried the old man upon his shoulders to save him from the flames. Similarly, Cassius says, I carried the tired Caesar, and this man is now become a god. And Cassius is a wretched creature and must bend his body. So now I have to bow to him. What kind of logic is that? If Caesar carelessly but nod on him, I have to bend, I have to obey. What kind of logic is that now? He had a fever. Now, another incident to prove Caesar's weakness. He had a fever when he was in Spain. And when the fit was on him, you see, Caesar was subject to epilepsy. He often got attacks of fits. I did note how he did shake. This man, who is supposed to be a military genius, a brave warrior, a brave soldier, he was shaking during that attack. It is true, this god did shake. His covered lips did from their colour fly, and that same eye, whose bend doth awe the world, did lose his lustre. So he says, when this gentleman was under attack, there was no colour on his face. He was drained of colour, not only on his face but also on his lips. And He was groaning. This man, whom the world held in awe, they hadn't seen him in that condition. Aye, and that tongue of his that bade the Romans mark him and write his speeches in their books, alas, it cried, "Give me some drink, Titinius, give me some drink." As a sick girl, he asked for a drink. All right? And Titinius is one of Cassius's friends. Ye gods, it doth amaze me, a man of such a feeble temper is constitution here, of such feeble health, should so get the start of the majestic world of Rome as an emperor, and bear this victory alone. So there you are. Now you know that Cassius really minds Caesar being so popular, and also the fact that he's on the verge of becoming king. So he's definitely going to block that. And in the bargain, he wants Brutus to join the gang of conspirators so that the whole thing, the assassination of Caesar, looks very noble. It would be as if the conspirators were only saving Rome from dictatorship. I'll have to leave you at this point because this is a fairly long scene and quite an important scene. So I'll end it here today, and do hit a like if you like my channel, and also subscribe to it, and I'll be soon back and continue with the rest of the scene. All right? Thank you so much, and bye for now.